On the 23rd of March 2018, just weeks after the pit had been released, a player by the name of MC Panda was playing amongst his friends. Wanting to swap to a new lobby, Panda was warped the exact same moment that he decided to store his armor set. When entering the new lobby, he noticed that the set hadn't been stored. Opening his Enderchest to perform the action a second time, MC Panda was in awe to see that his armor had duplicated. 3 years later, more than 15 duplication glitches have been discovered, kept secret, and eventually patched. My name is Sudi, and welcome to another episode of the history of the Hypixel pit. Real quick, join the Pitfall Discord server, subscribe, and even check out the Patreon for early access to videos. Now, let's get on with it. In the first week of 2017, Hypixel himself announced an addition to the server, the Prototype lobby. Prototype games, as their label suggests, are not finished. This new lobby was a way for the administrators to get feedback on new games early in their development. As Simon said, these games will be less polished than our other mini-games, and you may encounter bugs, glitches, or other issues. More than a year after this, the pit would be released. Being one of Minikloon's personal projects, the pit was a unique take on Minecraft's classic kit PvP style game mode. The basic premise is as follows. Drop down, get kills, gain XP to level up, and gold to upgrade perks, rinse, and repeat. After hitting level 120 and earning a certain amount of gold, players can prestige and do the process over again, but with an exclusive shop unlocked. Each prestige is harder than the last, but the perks from the renowned shop make things a lot more fun. Over time, updates would add new features to keep the game fresh. This, and the fundamental principle of the game, attracted quite a large player base. Long before Skyblock, the pit was Hypixel's very first continuous game mode, one which didn't have an ending. A player can join a game of Mega Walls, Sky Wars, or Duels, and with each of these, there would eventually be a finish, with clear winners and losers. The pit broke this mold by being a game focused on progression. The game never ends, at least not really. When you join, you have the exact same items, upgrades, and level as you did the moment you last left. This means that every action players take, every advantage, glitch, unintended game mechanic, or exploit that players abuse could and do have long-standing consequences. Duplication glitches are probably the most infamous type of exploit within any video game. By their very nature, a player can start at almost nothing and quickly progress to have insurmountable amounts of wealth. The pit is no exception to this. At any given moment, hundreds of players may be playing, but a single lobby can only support a maximum of 80 or so. In order to keep consistent progress for players, the server must save their profile every time they transfer. Unbeknownst to the vast majority of the community, this property could be abused quite a bit. And the story all starts with MC Panda on that fateful day. Panda's friends had warped him to another lobby, but because of the way Hypixel works, there were a few seconds after the warp had gone through before Panda actually made the swap. Consider this clip for example. The guy who recorded it was a friend of mine named Ethan, and here he's showcasing the dupe. Let's take a look. Zeus DMG warps, and boom, Ethan's profile is saved. The Enderchest saves the moment it's closed, so when Ethan joins the new lobby, his items are those which he had the instant the warp occurred. However, the Enderchest saved at a different point in time, so the items could be duped. This Enderchest duplication glitch was first discovered by MC Panda in March of 2018, and he quickly reported it to the Hypixel staff. The exploit was fixed, but the patch was faulty. Rather than duplicate the items, the new system would delete both copies. Panda also alerted the staff to this, and I guess that was dealt with accordingly. And by accordingly, I mean they likely just reverted the patch to begin with. Why? Because Hypixel, that's why. It was only after Ethan made his video and reported it that the dupe was patched for good. Check the date on this. This was made in May. This incident didn't pass without some players greatly benefiting. For example, a player named Kuna actually used the dupe to fill 9 alt accounts full with gear, so that he would virtually never run out. At maximum space efficiency, that means that he had space for more than 150 full Protection 1 diamond armor sets. This type of gear is commonly referred to as Prot, which also includes the Sharpness 1 sword. These items could only be obtained through the Care Package Miner event, which happens at a rate of about once an hour. Each care package could have anywhere between 1 and 5 set pieces, and it was random whether or not the pieces were enchanted or non-enchanted. I myself actually ran into one of the abusers of the Enderchest dupe on one occasion. If my memory serves me correctly, the guy's username was something along the lines of McBiggie, and he, for some reason, decided to toss 2 full god sets to me. This was my first run-in with a pit duplication glitch, but it most certainly wouldn't be the last. This transfer profile save could be abused in quite a variety of ways, and it most definitely would. The thing is, it would only work with direct pit-to-pit transfers. During this period of time, a few players, including Automized, Microwavable, and Woolsey, had discovered that warping someone who was in combat to a new pit lobby would not only save their inventory and bounty, but also their armor would drop and the bounty could be claimed in the first lobby. This exact same thing worked with the /play_pit command. In a test of trust, Automized told XX Mining Pro the capabilities of /playpit to see if he would keep his mouth shut. Mining Pro did not do this, and instead told the dupe to CO.AG, who recorded himself performing it and uploaded that to YouTube. Within a day, /playpit had been removed, but the same effect could still be completed with party warping. In the middle of all this, I was minding my own business when the word spread that someone named OTDX had been kicked out from my guild, the Black Hats. His kick had occurred because he supposedly knew a duplication glitch. Instantly I messaged OTDX, also known as Oliver, to see what was up, and he actually told me the dupe. Another friend of ours, Westernia, had also been let in on it, and together we duped a couple times per day. Oliver would use his 3 unique daily nicknames to dupe bounties as to not arouse suspicion. At this time, I was unable to do the dupe on my own, as it needed 3 accounts, 1 to claim, 1 to die, and a 3rd to warp. Because of this, and the fact that Westernia and OTDX weren't off and on, I told a friend of mine named Avex how it was done, and he gave me another account so I could dupe on my own. On the 18th of June 2018, I spent about 5 hours duping on my own to fill an Enderchest and 2 alts full of prot. I remember this day in particular because I was also packing up for vacation and didn't think I would get another chance to do it, should it have been patched in the time I was gone. Later that day, while messaging another acquaintance of mine, I hinted that I may know a duplication glitch. He happened to be part of the already established group, and not too long afterwards, I joined as well. As I would later find out, my 1-man, 3-account operation was super inefficient. Automized, Woolsey, and an entire group dedicated to the exploitation of this single glitch had figured out quite the system. We would find mostly dead lobbies, spend a ton of time clearing them out entirely, and then get to work. 5 people, all with 5,000 gold bounties, would gather down below. Woolsey would tag everyone, and Automized would warp us to another lobby. Woolsey would then party and warp us all back, only to repeat this process over and over. All the prot armor was left on the ground, and since we had more than we could possibly carry, much of it was burned in lava or despawned. Woolsey did every single one of her gold requirements with this method, starting at Prestige 24, and we had to get her to Prestige 30 before she was off to medical school. The Woolsey which occasionally plays today is someone who purchased the account from the original. Just 3 days before the 0.3.5 Mystic update, which removed prot armor from care packages, Woolsey achieved her goal and became the first person to reach white brackets by quite the margin. This meant Woolsey duped a total of 17.5 million gold, or the equivalent to 3,505,000 gold bounties. Before Mystics, one could only get a maximum of maybe 40 gold a kill. This made bounty hunting the most viable, legitimate gold grinding strategy for gold requirements, but that was much slower than duping bounties. That didn't stop some people from bounty hunting though, including this bee-hopper that was after me during the height of our schemes. It's such a shame that I lost that precious prot set. What was I going to do? On the same day that Woolsey hit Prestige 30, Only Skeleton leaked this screenshot, which got the dupe patched. Apparently he felt guilty about abusing it and burnt all of his duped items in lava. This screenshot is pretty cool though. There I am, nicked as Supreme Sniper. If you look even closer, Woolsey's nick is, if you're not subscribed, you should definitely subscribe. Huge shout out to Harry and the boys at PitSandbox.io for sponsoring this video. Pit Sandbox is a pit recreation with all of the cool stuff. What's super awesome is how Harry was able to recreate mystics which have long since been removed in order to showcase here. Why should you join Sandbox?
Well, consider this. Have you ever wanted to become one of the big fat Godset users that have gear to rival the dude from Spy Kids?
Somebody ring the dingster!
Unfortunately, this can be quite expensive. That's where Pit Sandbox comes in. Play the game like someone who has put thousands of hours into it, or one successful scam. Also, if you end up purchasing something from their store, use code SUDI for an epic discount. Now, let's get back to the duping.
Despite the fact that the legal inflow of prot gear was removed because of the update, its use would be maintained for the next 2 years. Now that's right, so much prot had been put into circulation that quite a bit of it still exists today. Not all of that was generated by this duplication glitch though, quite the contrary. In the Renown shop, one of the perks that one can unlock at a high prestige is called Divine Intervention. Each upgrade of this perk gives a 5% chance for one's inventory to be completely saved on death, for a max chance of 15%. At the outset of the 0.3.5 update, a ton of mystics were broken, imbalanced, or straight up busted. This single update in of itself could be the topic for a full video. Anyway, one of the broken enchantments was Lodbrok, which is still around. Lodbrok is an enchantment which increases the chance that your victim will drop their armor, an entirely useless perk in the current meta. Before it was nerfed, Lodbrok 3 granted a 100% chance for all armor pieces to drop. Pair this with a friend with Divine Intervention, and you'll have yourself a duplication glitch. Every time Divine Intervention activated was a completely new set of armor generated from thin air. Automized abused this with both I'm Just a Fish and I for a couple of days before Lodbrok 3 was nerfed to less than 100%, making it a complete gamble to use the Divine Intervention strategy. For an unknown reason, up until April 2020, logging out while in combat wouldn't count as a death. This glitch, exploit, unintended game mechanic only worked once per 24 hours though. Everyone could essentially get 1 free life every day, but after that, logging would remove 3 lives rather than 1. Why? To answer that question, one would have to understand the mind of Minikloon, an impossible task, suffice it to say. Up until when Minikloon finally disabled the possibility of enchanted diamond armor to be dropped entirely, players were able to dupe the drops of 1 kill per account per day. Several weeks later, word got out that a player named Ben B had duped his telebow and sold it. My dupe group had splintered a little, but what remained of us include Automize, Avex, OTDX, and me. I'm not sure how exactly, but eventually we found out Ben B's dupe method. I'm going to get a little technical here, so bear with me. Hypixel itself isn't a single server, at least not really. Hypixel uses a whole bunch of separate servers together in order to host thousands of players, as normal worlds can only host a maximum of a couple hundred people at a time. These servers/lobbies, also referred to as instances, can only last so long, thus, eventually they must restart. On the Pit, an instant shutdown will occur after a lobby has been around for 6 to 8 hours, or 18 to 24 Minecraft days. When an instant shutdown occurs, the entire lobby is saved. This is the same event which happened at a much smaller scale when a single person transferred for some of the previously mentioned dupes. That was a lot of mumbo-jumbo technical jargon, but if you didn't follow any of that, just know that instant shutdown meant dupe. We didn't know this for certain yet, but on the evening of July the 24th, Minikloon rolled out a new update. The 0.3.7 pizza patch was mostly uneventful aside from a ton of bug patches and mystic nerfs. However, MC Panda was in the pit at the same moment Minikloon put the new changes into existence. When this occurred, all of the lobbies had to shut down for the game update. Panda had a hunch, which most definitely paid off. While the lobby was closing, he put the contents of his entire Enderchest into his inventory. When Panda entered a new lobby, everything had been duplicated. Once again, my group had a consistent dupe. The only issue was timing. Like I mentioned before, these lobby shutdowns only occur after a lobby has been around for 6 to 8 hours. Back then, we weren't aware that the day statistic in the F3 menu correlated to the lifespan of a lobby, so it was entirely chance. Our group, mainly Automized, decided to dedicate the time to AFKing for hours on end with the hope of being able to dupe a full Enderchest of Mystics. Because of how much time was needed to even perform the dupe once, we had to make it count. This meant duplicating only the best mystics to maximize efficiency. Each member of our group provided different items to be duped and distributed. MC Panda borrowed Prince Link's artifact self-checkout 3s and then gave him 2 back. yikes. Panda also had one of the earliest pairs of Singularity pants, which were quite broken at the time. If you haven't seen my video about the history of COD pants, I'll explain Singularity quite briefly. Essentially, Singularity made a diamond sword equivalent to a wooden sword. Additionally, Panda's pair had Revitalize, also broken at the time, which meant the user received Infinite Regeneration 3 and Speed 2 if they somehow got below 7 hearts. Furthermore, we also got our hands on a Prune 3. As for my contributions, I had just recently bought the very first Telebow 3 from Skunker. The deal was a pair of Instaboom 3 pants for his bow, which was pretty fair given how good Instaboom was before its nerf. It amazes me to know that Skunker still has those very same pants today on an alt account more than 2.5 years later. At the time, Telebow 3 had a very fast cooldown, and I mean super speed. It took only 2 seconds for those Tele 3s to recharge in order to be shot again. I used to be able to zip zap zop around the map in no matter of seconds. You could even teleport straight into spawn. This was also before the spawn removed one's kill streak, so many players would just teleport there if a hunter came, chill out for a bit, and then hop right back down as soon as the danger passed. A pair of pants I had recently acquired were these bad boys. Double jump can no longer be enchanted because it messes with Watchdog or something, which is why they're a rare commodity nowadays. This pair of double jump 3s were particularly spicy, as Prune was the most lethal weapon to go up against. Prune 3 literally did 3 hearts of true damage to everyone every third hit. That averages out at a solid 2 extra health dealt every single hit. When people say the current Pit's mystics aren't balanced, you have no idea. After duplicating and distributing this gear and much more, suffice it to say, we were literally unstoppable. The instant Shutdown Enderchest dupe was patched, but we still had our items. Not too long after the instance dupe was patched, a player named Potty was doing a trade with a Prestige 10 player. This was before the trade system was implemented, so they had to drop the items to each other. Potty dropped his end of the bargain first, but was suddenly warped to a new lobby. After realizing he hadn't actually dropped his item, he got a message from the Pres 10 who told him, "Come back, I still have to pay you." Potty immediately realized that dropping the item at the moment of the warp had caused it to dupe. Much like the previous transfer dupes, this was done using the same fundamental flaw within the game's code. Potty was contemplating what to do with his newfound knowledge when he messaged only Skelet. He asked Skelet the hypothetical question: if you found a game-breaking exploit, would you report it or abuse it? Skelet, having had a change of heart after previously getting the Party War Prot dupe patched, joined Potty in duping. This duplication glitch could be abused in massive proportions, and they quickly became some of the most stacked players in the game after having duped Prune 3s and everything else imaginable. One time while they were going about their illegal activities, Ben B observed what they had been doing and figured out how the exploit worked. He and Usher went around duping this 2-life Prune 3 sword and sold it for PayPal to as many people as possible. Before quitting, they both made about $300, which was unheard of at the time. Automized and Woolsey were using the same glitch in private, and they duplicated Woolsey's Robin Hood 3 pullbow. This was literally game-changing. These robins got distributed like mad, and let me take a second to explain to you why they were so overpowered. Consider this: Robin Hood makes every single arrow hit its target. Combine that with Pullbow's cooldown being broken, and you get player tornadoes. The only way to escape was Telebow, and many players didn't have those. The game was pure chaos for about a week or so. That entire summer was, in my opinion, the greatest the pit has ever been. For me, and the other abusers at least. I got my hands on one of those Robin pullbows and went nuts for a couple of days. On the evening of August 18th, 2018, I got a message from OTDX. At that point, I only knew the Lodbrok combat log prot dupe, but he gave me some extremely interesting intelligence. On his own, OTDX had worked out what Potty, Ben B, and others had been abusing, and created a stash account with 7 of each of these items. Artifact Self-Checkout 3, Prune 3, Billionaire 3 Combo Damage 3, Healer 3, Singularity 3, Protection 3, Volley 1 Devil Chicks 1, Robin Hood Pullbow, Telebow 3, and the Double Jump 3 mirrors. Healer 3 back then healed you and the other person you were attacking 3 hearts each, meaning it was impossible to die, on top of the other 30 items, which made it doubly impossible to die. That very next morning, a new update had been released, the 0.3.8 Corals map. Aside from some balance changes, including an extra hit needed for Prune to proc, massive Telebow nerfs, and the removal of Double Jump and Robin Hood from the enchant table, The party warp drop dupe had been patched. Minikloon had implemented a dupe detection system. This would find and delete any items it believed had been duped, so these entire accounts got cleared of items. Take a look at this screenshot from Miner Event. When he logged on, nearly his entire inventory and Enderchest was deleted. This was the case with myself, OTDX, and pretty much every top player in the game. With this patch, Minikloon also stated it was now bannable to abuse duplication glitches in the pit. The pit would finally get a break from having to deal with these exploits. Psych, it literally took a week and we were back in business. Just days after the drop warp dupe had been patched, I got into a conversation with MC Panda. After implementing a classic conversation starter, he told me about a gold dupe he had discovered before the Mystic update. The duplication glitch would work by warping a bounty player and then tagging them after the warp had occurred. The gold would be claimed, but the player who was warped didn't lose their bounty. With this newfound knowledge, OTDX, I'm Just a Fish, Ochil and I started to get to work. Because the tag had to occur after the party warp, a lot of communication was needed. One day, while OTDX and Fish were calling, a player named Kaguru joined without the other two noticing. It didn't take long for him to realize what was going on, and he and his friends started duping bounties as well. Needing to have a completely empty lobby was quite the restriction. Not only were they extremely rare, but the few players within them, for some reason, are some of the most stubborn people I have ever met in my entire life. After warping everyone out, other than a single person, OTDX and I'm Just a Fish had little between them and hundreds of thousands of duplicated gold. Unfortunately, the last person in the lobby was a player who didn't speak English at all, and Ochil literally spent 30 minutes translating stuff into Russian to try to get this stubborn non to leave. Only on Hypixel, ladies and gentlemen. Only on Hypixel. Minikloon caught onto our antics a couple of weeks later, and the exploit was patched on September 25th, 2018. Just minutes after learning of the patch and looking for workarounds, Fish and Oliver found one. Kag also found this workaround, and it would take another month before the ghost tag bypass was patched. Unbeknownst to my boyos, there were still 2 more ways to perform this bounty dupe. After the warp, the dupe would still work if the tag was done with true damage, such as with Grandmaster or something, which deals half a heart of true damage on a fishing rod hit. Additionally, killing the bountied player in a single hit would also work. This could be done with Billionaire 3, but neither of these tactics were abused very much. The few people who knew these methods were much busier with other ventures. Now, it's finally time to talk about the most powerful exploit in the history of the pit. 8 years ago, a post was made on the bug report section of the Mojang forum. A player by the name of Oddman360 described a situation which had occurred while he and his friend were going for the Diamonds to You achievement. After being given 8 diamonds, Oddman tossed them back to his friend, only to be lagged out by the server. When he rejoined, he still had the diamonds, but his friend also had picked up the ones which had been tossed. Oddman described this glitch as Ghost Players in Multiplayer, but it would go by many other names. Over the next 2 years, more than 55 players would describe this exact same glitch, and it could be consistently recreated by practically anyone. The exploit was done as follows. The player loads up Minecraft, joins his favorite server, and then hangs out for a while. By loading up a new instance of Minecraft and joining the same server, there is a chance that the new instance would join without kicking the old one. This ghost player could toss items, be killed for his stuff, and it worked on every server. On Hypixel, which operates on many servers connected by Spigot, the ghost player worked mostly the same. The key difference was that Hypixel has many complex game modes, but anything done by the ghost wouldn't save. The exploit initially described by Oddman360 as Ghost Players in Multiplayer would later be named the double login after it was abused in the Hypixel pit. This glitch is single-handedly the most powerful exploit in the history of this entire game mode, and dare I say, the entire history of Hypixel. Some of you may be confused as to the timeline of these events. If double login was discovered and widely reported between 2013 and 2015, how could it have been abused in the pit more than 5 years after its initial discovery? Was the Hypixel developer team so ignorant that they let it slip? Well, not exactly. I recently heard rumor that the admin doctor knew about the double login all the way back in 2014. but didn't think much of it. He knew it could be used to get rerolls in Warlords, but didn't deem it to be a serious issue. This wasn't ignorance on his part, as Hypixel was way different back then than it is now. Back then, every single game mode was one and done. What I mean by that is that every game on the server had a start and a finish with a clear winner. Because of this, Doctor didn't think much of the double login. Yeah, sure, it could be used, but for what purpose? The only thing players could do was play with a ghost version of themselves, but that was entirely useless. The stats of those games wouldn't even count, so there was no point. 4 years later, when the pit would be released though, well, that's a whole different story. A story which involves deception, betrayal, permanent bans, and mini-clones test server. Now, this video has been going super long already, so I'm gonna leave it right here. Part 2 will cover the double login, as well as every other duplication glitch in this game mode's history. Be sure to hit subscribe and be ready for part 2, and drop a like if you enjoyed the video. If you're really desperate though, you can always join the Patreon down below to get early access to all my upcoming stuff. Anyway, that's all I have for you guys today. I've been your host Sudi, Pitfall, or even Pit MC. See you guys next time.